We've got a live chat going. It's alive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What happened to my little guitar? I could get the guitar out for sure. Okay, we're on for 1 minute now. Right on time. Right on time. Well, a little bit of news anyway. Bureau of Prisons is trying to have some kind of new rules about you have to pay your fines or restitution first before you can buy any commissary or use the telephones or what have you. What do you guys think about that? That the Federal Bureau of Prisons wants to pass legislation saying that 75% of whatever somebody gets sent into them or earns has to go toward restitution or fines, which also means the prison-based restitution or fines that are imposed by the disciplinary hearing officer. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit wild, right? I guess they've got El Chapo's sons charged. What's up, Zeus? There's Fireman Larry. Dom. All's well. All's well, fellas. All is well that ends well. I think all is well that begins well and ends well. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Yeah, there's a couple of, small issues that are in the media. I saw something else too that was of some interest, was the way that they're implementing the First Step Act and some of the, I think what they call game time credits. Yeah, those guys are just, we've been watching this series about the cartels, and those folks are just so far off the chain. It's like, whoo, man, what is this? You see one episode and you've seen them all. It's the same old thing, right? Just mindless violence, just outrageous stuff. But it seems that our own society is breaking down a little bit. It seems like our our own country is kind of heading in that direction as well. It seems like there's a little bit of a breakdown across the lines. I don't know if it's true or not, but keep seeing all these incidents of judges and lawyers and prosecutors and investigators and police officers that are they just do off the wall stuff, right? They lie, they make stuff up, they really abuse their authority. It's a small jump from that to just taking some cash to look the other way, right? I don't know how long it'll be before people, organized crime in the United States is able to get inside the pockets of law enforcement. I'm sure they are to some degree in multiple locations and levels of law enforcement. I'm sure there's a lot that goes on that nobody knows about. But is it going to become just like, is South Texas becoming like Mexico, like the Wild West? I know we broke down in an airplane one time on our way. I think we were going to Oklahoma City here. I was transferring somewhere, and the airplane, one of its engines, shut down, and we were at Laredo. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think a person in a position of authority that has that public trust and then intentionally breaches that trust, I think that's kind of a serious thing. I think it might be a little more serious than just your average, typical, ordinary crime. So yeah, there should be. But again, it boils down to personal integrity. But we were down there, we landed, we all had to go to the Laredo County Jail. And right across, they put us up on the roof for a while. And if you stood up on one of the benches and you looked out these like openings, they weren't windows, they were just opening in the building structure on the roof. You could see all the way over across the river and see, the new Laredo, the Mexican version of Laredo, and it was really close to being there, and you could feel just in the atmosphere, you could feel that there was a difference right there down along that border, that there was a different vibe in the mix. But yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I can only imagine that since COVID and since all these twists and turns politically that we've had, and all of the problems with law enforcement across the board, I can only imagine that it's gotten worse. The influx and the trafficking, and it's probably only going to get more and more. So, yeah, I don't think it is going to make that big of a difference. Hey, country, you're at the ER with the stomach issues. Oh, man. Sorry to hear that, country. Hope they can do something for you and help to get that straightened out. Yeah, John, good to hear from you. Thank you. I tried to be, fair and just kind of neutral, but it was really hard to keep my perspective there. We're only human, and sure, you have a way of looking at things when you're in that cage, and it doesn't look the same when you're on the outside looking in as it does when you're on the inside looking out. So, but everybody that's read the book has come away with a different perspective anyway, a different feeling, and you'll know yourself that everything that's in there is the absolute gospel truth. So it's it's just part of my story. Yeah, no, I think you'll enjoy it. I think you will, and I really appreciate you, purchasing a copy. Really do appreciate that. But yeah, law enforcement generally, I'm trying to get like a little bit of a course together that's kind of, there's the wood. The woo. But yeah, some kind of a little bit different perspective, because I just think that policing, I think it just needs a little bit of, I think the more that this wall is built, this barrier between, law enforcement and the communities, the more people distrust law enforcement, I think the worse it gets over time, because, it's just like marginalizing anyone, right? Any group of people. There's John Wolf. Johnny Wolf in the house. But yeah, I'm sure that from place to place, from time to time, all this stuff happens to different people, different individuals. There's really not that much that the person can do about it. I mean, I see a lot of groups that form, a lot of criminal justice and social justice and social reform and prison reform and all kinds of groups. There's like thousands of them. But what are they really doing except bumping their gums? I mean, it's a small handful of people in Washington that control the outcome of these systems, and until they decide to do some kind of a comprehensive overhaul of the entirety of the federal criminal code from A to Z, I don't see all that much ever changing. And I certainly don't see much changing in the states when the states are dependent upon the federal government for a lot of their funding and have to abide by federal guidelines in order to get it. So yeah, we're probably not going to see some major change in the infrastructure of the criminal justice system in the United States, but we can see a lot of change. Yeah, no, Johnny. They go to Washington, they've got their lobby groups, and they're powerful too, because they got organization and they've got money. And yeah, I mean, it's to their advantage, right? Job security, more power, if you will. They each person has their own little fiefdom, right? I remember at ADX, there was a counselor. I filed a grievance because they wouldn't give me the stamps they were supposed to give me. And the counselor just came by, and I showed him a copy that I got of the response from the region. It was denied at the local level, of course. But the region said, yeah, they're supposed to give you your stamps every week. I think it was 5 stamps. I was on indigent status, and I needed those stamps because it was really, the only kind of, like money or commercial opportunity that I had to trade or to send mail or what have you. So, yeah, I agree, John. I agree. It's, but, everybody has First Amendment rights to petition the government and to set up that kind of an organization, and obviously they do. And you've got very, very powerful private prison interests too. Those are the real movers and shakers, I think, are these private prisons and contractors that are actually publicly traded companies. So people are getting, they're getting pretty high dividends off of those stocks. And of course, what do you need to keep everything moving there, everything growing? You need more bodies, right? You need more prisoners. So I think for a long time, it's just been a revolving door. the criminal justice system in the United States, it's just a revolving door. You know, you get some young kid who's made some bad choices, obviously, and you know, you end up throwing him in a cage, and then it just creates this sort of perpetual, or at least habitual, cycle of you know, the kid gets out, goes back to the same neighborhood, back around the same friends, really hasn't learned much of anything. Maybe a little bolder, maybe a little more confident in the criminal aspect, gets back into it, boom, hit again, maybe with some more time than he originally got. You know, you build up a couple of convictions, all of a sudden you're in the career offender program. Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. All laws do need to be updated. We've got a lot of, yeah, I did a little over 13 at the ADX, 13 and some change, almost 14 in the control unit. But yeah, I mean, you get rid of isn't that the process of making things better or improvement? You get rid of what doesn't work, you keep what does. Dave, glad to hear from you. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with the, you know, I think it all ties back in, because when you have organized crime like you have in Mexico and South America and elsewhere, I mean, it's not just there, but when you have the cartels in operation and, you know, they're making billions of dollars by manufacturing and smuggling or sending all kinds of really bad stuff into the United States. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. You know, and it's killing a lot of citizens. It's making, I mean, you could just see on any streets, any of the major cities in America, they're all practically the same. You've got these encampments, you've got these people that are just strung all the way out, and I don't think it's going to get any better. I don't think that there's any kind of a magic pill that's going to all of a sudden wake people up and give them the energy and the drive and the motivation and the ability to come out from under those demons of addiction. I mean, you know, even when you have housing, even when you have programs, even when you have all of these things, these interventions and stuff available, a lot of people just don't want it. They don't want it. They'll just reject it, refuse it outright. I've known people that would just rather sleep under a bush somewhere than go into an apartment. It's just the way that they've got used to living, and it's kind of what can you do? You can't really arrest those people. I know ex-President Trump was talking about, like, okay, let's take these homeless people and these addicts and let's set aside some federal property or some land, state or federal, and let's kind of set up some tent city on this land, and let's give them some basic medical care and give them food. And I think that what that would do, I believe, is just cause probably a lot more problems than it solves. Well, no, they operate around a 2,000 calorie diet typically. But, you know, you've got, in prison, of course, you've got a lot of different metabolisms. You've got skinny guys that can eat a ton of food, right? And you've got big guys, of course, probably need more calories to, you know, keep everything fueled up and moving. Um, you know, I really didn't have that much of a problem with the food thing because I really don't eat all that much to begin with. And I was like, I was cool with just, you know, if I had a couple packs of ramen noodles, I'd just smash them on the floor, boom, in the bag, right? Bang, bang, just break them up, open up, just eat them, you know, just crunch on them as a snack. I didn't like to use the seasoning packs because it was just too much MSG and stuff like that in there. But I mean, you know, you could get by. I mean, obviously you could get by, you could survive, but whether you were going to, you know, have some kind of turmoil or comfort was, you know, is a different story for each person. I think that a lot of guys who just stay in the general population, you know, they have access to things from food service, at least vegetables and things like that, that they can get other stuff. You can get meat and stuff like that every once in a while. You can certainly get like eggs and certain items that have protein in it, and a lot of that food, I think, is, you know, it's carbohydrate based. It's kind of starchy, but there's, I mean, I don't know. I didn't think it was a terrible diet. You know, anybody would say, okay, well, you could improve it here or improve it there, and it's really not to my liking, and, you know, we need more of this or more of that. But to me, it was sufficient, and a lot of times I just wouldn't eat. I mean, I would go days without eating. A lot of times that was on like one meal a day. Yeah, I just got used to it. And yeah, I think, I don't know, you know, everybody's in kind of a situation somehow, right? Everybody's got a perspective on life. So, no, I understand, John. I know. I've dealt with chronic pain for a long time, and, you know, it's like CBD, right? Some of it's got the Delta 8, and Delta 8 under the Agriculture Act of 2018 is not, it's not illegal. It's not federally illegal. It is, in fact, legal because it's a derivative of hemp. But yeah, can it still show up in the UA? Sure it can. I don't think there's any way for them to differentiate. So, you know, sometimes you just gotta, you know, use, just use some rationality and say, okay, well, you know, I've got to trade this for that because the outcome on this is probably going to be better than, you know, and sometimes you just got to be able to deal with pain. You got to be able to deal with it. I mean, I used to have like some serious pain issues. I mean, you know, it was kind of some acute pain from time to time. And, you know, in prison, you couldn't get anything to adequately deal with the pain. So no medications or anything like that. I think they would put you like Yeah, I was tortured. Yeah, and yeah, I was subjected to actual physical torture a couple of times, but I think I tortured myself as much as I was tortured by anyone else, because I didn't understand how to avoid the mindset of thinking of myself as a victim. Um, when we start thinking of ourselves as victims, then we take on this victim mindset, right? And maybe we are. Maybe our rights, our human rights, our constitutional rights, our statutory, maybe they are being violated some way by others. But do you classify yourself as a victim? Because if you do, now you've put yourself into that victim category. You've self-described as a victim, and now you're kind of trapped in that victim sphere mentally. And now all you can do is point the finger at others and basically, and look, anybody will tell you, John will tell you, anybody will tell you that I filed lawsuits right and left. I don't think there's a single warden that isn't on pacer right now, with one of my actions, one or more. I sued the Bureau of Prisons probably 100 times over different stuff. And, the courts, they're not really trying to advance civil rights of prisoners. Yeah, if you look it up on Basic, you're gonna find just case after case after case after case. I was a frequent flyer. I was definitely on them for like just about everything that they were doing, because there was no other way there was no other legitimate way to do anything, to express that kind of frustration. I mean, your frustration's multiplied when you yourself are the subject of something that you perceive as being unconstitutional or illegal. You yourself, you are on the hot seat then. So it does make a difference as to, how you think about it. But, after a while, there were times when I would just give up. I would just say, nah, these courts aren't trying to hear it. They're not giving me the law. They're not going to give you the same respect as a pro se litigant or a prisoner that they would a member of the bar. Any other member of the bar is, at least going to get some degree of respect for their pleadings. But yeah, Dom, I was a paper pusher. I mean, I pencil whipped them pretty good, all throughout. More than 3 decades, I laid that paper down heavy. And, I was constantly writing to, the White House. I was writing to the people who were involved in these ideas about criminal justice reform. I was constantly trying to push the idea that there's just too many people incarcerated, too many people living in cages that really don't need to be there for that long of a period of time. There's a certain point where, the result is, just worse than the offense that they committed. I mean, what you're doing to them is worse than what they did, because whether you know it or not, the system helps to create more crime, more criminal activity in society, because, oh, you're going to throw whatever money you have to throw at getting a conviction. Katie bar the door. I mean, it's wide open, right? Wide open resources. You get that conviction, and then what? You just throw everybody in a cage and leave them to their own devices, pretty much? Or you throw them in a cage and try to, really step down on them to control them? Yeah, it just generates and promotes more crime, more bad acts. And look, it's not just the bad acts. Alex, I didn't get it, Alex. I didn't see it. It's not just the bad acts of the prisoners. It creates bad acts from the public officials, the administrators and the line staff. I mean, it gives people an opportunity to abuse their authority. And I mean, that's just standard to human beings. Any human being you give authority over other people, they're going to abuse it at some point, in some way. Sometime they're going to abuse it. And that's just the way we are. Most of us don't have the kind of personal integrity, the kind of personal character development that's necessary to wield that kind of power, that kind of authority over others. We can't be fair with it. Why? Because we're acting on our emotions, we're acting on our beliefs, we're acting on sometimes an entirely different agenda. And when you see that areas are not being enforced, that, yeah, I can do this and get away with it, then, yeah, I mean, you're going to tend to do that and get away with it. And like I was saying, a lot of these prison administrators, like with the counselor just, he refused to provide the stamps. And I'm standing there showing him the response from Region, granting my grievance and directing the prison to provide me the stamps. And the counselor's standing there outside the door saying, I'm not doing that. I don't care what they say. File another grievance and walk away. So it's like, and there was nothing that was, it was too petty for anybody to say or do anything to the counselor. I mean, there was no staff that was gonna overrule him or override him on my behalf. So that was kind of a wash for the time being. So then I had to resort to washing stamps, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But yeah, I mean, you get pushed into a corner and don't really have a good way, a good idea about how to get out of there. Hey, Diggity. Cheers, man. Cheers, brother. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. We're just kind of throwing it about a little bit, just discussing some of these just issues, topics like overkill, over-sentencing, abuse of authority. But I want to throw in this because I think it's good if we balance things out a little bit. Because, yeah, we naturally have a tendency to say, aha, yeah, it's his fault, or it's this guy's fault, or it's her fault, or it's the fault of the system. It's the system that's set up wrong, and it could be doing better and everything like that. But there's another element that's involved, and that is personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. We as individuals, as men and women, as particularly young folks, young men and women, we have to take responsibility for our own thoughts, our own emotions, and ultimately our own behaviors, right? So if we can learn before we get caught in that trap, in that web, if we can learn, how to make better decisions. Because what's a bad decision? To me, a bad decision is committing a crime that gets you thrown into a cage for a period of time in your life. I think that's a bad decision, right? And yeah, you can point at the cage, you can point at the prosecutors, you can point at everything around you and say, yeah, well, it's that person's fault, or it's the system's fault, or it's this, or it's that. And but at some point, you have to be able to take responsibility. You have to own yourself. You have to say, okay, I made a mistake here. And now I need to recalibrate. Now I need to relearn. I need to rethink. I need to transform the way I perceive life, or these things that I consider to be valuable, or these behaviors that are habitual. I need to rethink these. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you did it, that's on you, right? I mean, unless somebody held a gun against your head and said, I'm going to blow your brains out, or kidnapped your family and held them at hostage and said, I'm going to kill them unless you go in this bank. And that actually has happened too, right? Remember that guy in Pennsylvania that they put the explosive device around his neck? He was kind of a little bit of a crazy dude. And they kidnapped him, they grabbed him, and they put this device around his neck, like this collar, this metal collar that he couldn't get off. And he went in the bank and he got the money and brought it out, and the cops surrounded him. Remember that? And they just made him sit down at the front of the car. And he's like, hey man, this thing's gonna go off, man. Yeah. And it did go off. It blew off his head. So yeah, I mean, unless you're being forced into it. Oh, he was in on it? I didn't know that, Alex. I thought they just grabbed that guy. I didn't know that. Yeah, he might have been in on it, but whatever it was, it killed him. I mean, whatever it was, blew his head off. I know that much. But unless you're under that kind of and some of the pressure in some of these neighborhoods and some of these environments, it could rise to that level where it's a matter of coercion, psychological and physical coercion. You don't join a particular gang, what happens? Now you're just out there, now you're just a target, a victim. But then again, yeah, Patty Hearst was another one. Yep. Patty Hearst, Stockholm Syndrome. Yep. But outside of all of that, I think we just need to be able to accept ourselves, accept the fact that our thoughts create emotions, which lots of times drives some type of behavior, right? So, yeah, we just need to be real with ourselves. We need to be true to ourselves. We need to see ourselves the way we really are, rather than the way we think we are, or the way we think we want other people to see us. Because a lot of people are just living these false lives, these they have a public life, but then they have a private life. And the two are kind of opposite, or at least opposed. And, we put up these facades, we put up these pretenses, and I think the key is just to get down to the brass tacks. Yeah, it's just a matter of, I think, just coming down to where the rubber meets the road and just saying, hey, I got to be responsible for my own decisions about my own behaviors. And that includes the way I think and the way I feel. I'm responsible for all of that. Because why? Because, yeah, I get it, John. Why am I responsible for that? Because nobody else is responsible for what I do, what I say, what I think, what I feel. Nobody else owns that. That's part of me. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's just coming to the point where you're just ready to be real with yourself. Yeah, you got that right. Common sense is not as prevalent as it used to be. I don't even know what common sense is anymore, because there is no real commonality to any of it. I mean, everybody, it seems like people just have these really different perspectives, and it seems like there's just a big gap between reality, which is just what is objectively real, and these perceptions of reality that people have. And yeah, you got to have standards. You got to have some kind of standards. You got to have some kind of guidelines in there. You have to have something. Otherwise, there are no standards. You have to have some kind of standards for your personal inventory, your personal qualities, the qualities of your heart and mind. You have to have some value judgments. You have to have something that you consider to be attributes that really are attributes. A lot of people think that they have qualities or skills that aren't really qualities, or, I mean, they might be skills in a certain sense, but they're certainly not qualities in the human sense. Yeah, Sean. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for your comment. Yeah, there's a lot of guys. Look, I did my crimes. I was guilty. I was guilty as sin. Not only did I do the crimes that I was convicted of, but yeah, I did a lot more than I was ever convicted of. And I think that's most people that are convicted. But you do have people that did not commit the crime that they're charged with. I know some absolute horror stories about how people that did not commit the crime they were actually railroaded. There's no other way to say it. They were actually railroaded by the investigators and by the prosecutors. And it's like the Supreme Court said. It's not whether you're factually guilty or factually innocent that counts. That doesn't mean a fart in a whirlwind to the courts or under the law. According to the Supreme Court, it doesn't amount to a hill of beans. It's whether or not the prosecutor can prove that you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt or not. Alex, peace, brother. Good to see you. There's Pete Hart. All right. Pennsylvania. In the house. Sean. I didn't catch it all, but yeah, I was just responding to the last one, the last question. And, to me, it just seems like we just need to slow down a little bit, realize that it's hard to be human in every case, any case. It's difficult to be human. Human life is not, Amigo guy from Maine, all right, Maine. But yeah, it's hard to be human. It's not an easy thing to be a human being. To be born into this world and to have to come face to face with the realities of a physical life in a material world, especially one that is, it's kind of to me, it's kind of strange because it's almost hybrid, right? Human beings, we don't really consider ourselves to be animals per se, but we are biologically. We're no different biologically than any other warm-blooded mammal on the face of the earth. Hey, Joey, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to have you on board, brother. But, psychologically, I think in the depths of our being, there's another element. I think the ancients referred to it as the rational mind, or the ability to reason. And, I think this together with opposable thumbs and walking upright and dexterity and being able to communicate verbally, Southern Kentucky, all right. I love Kentucky, man. I love Kentucky. I love the United States, man. I love this country. I think it's a great and beautiful country. I think great things have happened. Death is just part of the cycle. I mean, it is beautiful. Kentucky's beautiful. Love it, man. Love it. I haven't been down through there in a while, but I'm going to get back through there one of these days soon. Yeah, death is it's just a natural part of the progression, right? It's just something that we just have to kind of accept. Now, we don't have to cause it. We don't have to. But really, I mean, the number one rule, I think, in human life, they call it the golden rule, but it's really simplified by, the ancient medical phrase of do no harm. If you're not intentionally harming other people or other people's property, then you're probably going to be in good shape. Well, I think to answer your question about that, I can only answer it the way I see it. I believe personally that there's different levels of life. And yeah, Pete Hart. Yeah, I was looking at Tuesday afternoon the other day too, just the beginning, and I remembered all of that. Haven't been by there in a while. But yeah, death is it's something that I think it's just natural. I think when it comes, it just comes. We're not going to know anything. We're not going to recall or know anything about this life, this level afterwards. If there's higher level of life or higher levels, then I think we sort of have to kind of try to get ready or become viable to exist at that higher level. I mean, if we don't come up to speed with the cultivation or transformation of our hearts and minds, then we're not going to be ready for the next level, because I think on the next level you've got to have a little higher caliber. You've got to be a little more developed. And the way I look at this life is that it's rough. It's a training ground. It's not meant to be anything comfortable or anything pretty. And all you have to do is just look around you. You can say, oh, what beautiful clouds, what beautiful mountains, okay, I accept that in the moment. There's nothing wrong with having joy and being at peace within yourself, and really, enjoying the parts of your life that you can. But overall, we all have to face death. So in the end, death is the great equalizer, right? And, think of it this way. I mean, in under 100 years from now, there's over 8 billion people on the planet right now. So in, let's say, 99 years, 99.9% of the people the 8 billion people, over 8 billion people who are now existing on the face of Earth are going to be dead and gone. Little less than a century. Almost everybody that's here right now, that's even born today, will be gone. So, I mean, is it really worth all that mental effort investing into everything? And, I think the Bible actually says it well. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses himself in the process? I know people that spend their whole lives just digging for gold, just trying to get rich, and sometimes they make it, sometimes they do it, sometimes they build up a lot of wealth and then they die. And what happens? You certainly can't take it with you. So was that a good investment? Was that something that was worth all that mind strain and stress and effort? Yeah, I mean, I think every person has to come to terms with death. I think to try to just keep doing things or just kind of going on these mental detours so that we don't have to face the ultimate reality of a physical death, I think it does more harm than good, because I think if we could get to the point where we weren't so terrified of dying, so terrified of this natural progression of life, I think we'd start to see things a little bit differently. I don't think there'd be that wall, that psychological wall that we build between ourselves and death. Like, for example, if I knew for a fact that I was going to die tomorrow, I'd probably try to get as much joy and happiness out of today that I possibly could, right? It would probably just propel me to enjoy my life today that much more, because I wouldn't be taking things for granted. I wouldn't be taking each day or each moment for granted. And unfortunately, that's what all of us do to some degree or another. We take it for granted. So knowing that we're either moving up or moving out, within a fairly short time, I don't know. I think it kind of motivates me to try to be a better human being. It motivates me to try to have a better quality of life and not to get not to allow myself to get dragged down into the minutia, the political arguments and the disagreements and the issues and the stuff that I really can't do all that much about anyway, except just sit there and spin my wheels until my brain starts smoking, right? To me, it's better just to let all that stuff go, accept myself for who I am and for what and who I hope to become. Just gradually, little by little, day by day. Yeah, NBD, NBD, NBD. No big deal. It's no big deal. A lot of the stuff that we think is something that's a big deal or that's tragic or traumatic or whatever, if you look at it just a little bit differently, from a little bit different perspective, a lot of times, and I would venture to say most times in my own experience, I've found that there's what they call a silver lining. There's another side to it. There's something that has been shown to me. If I don't get locked into one attitude about it, if I don't get locked into one way of looking at it, then I can look at all the different angles and I can see that, more times than not, on the other side of it, there's actually a benefit. And, it's just getting over ourselves a little bit, kind of stabilizing. I think that happens as we get older. We kind of stabilize a little bit. Some people never do. Some people just stay with their same general behaviors mentally, emotionally, and to some degree behaviorally, even though you do tend to age out of those. But there's a different way of looking at life. There's some excitement. There's some adventure. There's some goodness. There's some cheerfulness. There's some joy. There's a lot of good, a lot of enjoyment, I think, that can be gleaned from your life, from any life. But it's hard to do it when you're in a cage. It's harder, very much harder, when you're locked in a little cage. Very, very hard then to, but it's easier to see yourself then too, if you want to. It's easier to just be honest with yourself. I used to have these little self-talk discussions, right? And I'd be really hard on myself because, who was there to intervene or moderate or whatever other than me? And I knew, or came to understand the truth about myself to some degree that actually helped me to determine a way forward, a way out of those mindsets, those attitudes, those behaviors, if you will. At least to some degree, where I could continuously make progress if I just stayed with it. And, so, that's why this program, the manual program for personal growth and development came to me. It was through that cauldron of fire and aggravation and frustration and anguish and pain and suffering. This is what has come out of it. And so, did I feel good about it at the time? Not really. But, I don't think I felt as bad about it at the time as I would have if I wasn't trying to apply a different perspective to myself. Just observationally, just looking at myself and saying, okay, yeah, you need to stop doing this, and you need to start doing this, and you need to take control over this attitude and this behavior and this Because our behaviors aren't just physical. Most of our behaviors are mental and emotional. So that's where everything starts. And I think it's where everything ends. Anyway, my friends, I'm at the end of this. It's been a little bit over an hour, and I'm going to sign off. And I will see everybody back here, hopefully, next Tuesday, same place, same time. And I appreciate you guys, all of you. Thank you. And I'll see you again soon. Peace, Dewey. Peace, diggity dang. Peace, everybody. Ethan, see ya.